Hi, welcome back to the breadboard. If you've been following along on the last couple of my videos on the Siemens IoT2020 that's available through RS Components, and you've managed to get yourself a hold of one, or you're using an IoT2040, which is the full-blown version, not the educational version, and you've installed your OS and now you're looking at installing some applications on it. Unless you're using the absolute basics of maybe some Arduino sketches or something like that, and you have gone to try and load up Node-RED, MQTT, SQLite, or some other applications, you will quickly realize that you are running out of memory, and you may have a 32 gig SD card or something in between. But if you look at the file size system by just going into your command line and just doing a df-h, you'll see that the image that's created on the SD card is only a little over 542 megabytes, or in my case it's exactly 542 megabytes, and of that 448 megabytes has been used, leaving only about 12% free SD card space. Now of course that's absolutely no good, and there's no resemblance to the size of the SD card that you may have put in there. So it doesn't matter if you're using a 4 gig, an 8 gig, or a 16 or a 32 gig. This process that I'm going to show you is exactly the same. And what I'm going to show you in this video is how to expand the file size very easily to use all of the available SD card. Now I'm going to put the instructions, the actual commands, into the post so that you can just copy and paste them if you want, or you will see them as I'm doing it in this video. So I'm just going to increase the view to the full screen for just the PuTTY session, which is connected to the TTL serial in this case. Now you can also do this through an SSH port if you want. It doesn't matter. The process is exactly the same once you're connected. So let's get to it. Okay, so first thing we've done is I've connected to the IoT2020 and I've done a df-h to confirm that I indeed have a very limited amount of SD card space available to me in the FS. So the first thing I want to do is to remove the existing partition space. So to do that I need to use the Fdisk command. So if we look at the partitioning, I happen to know that the file system I want is mmcblkop2. So there are a number of different commands that show you various views to the file system and how the SD card is being used. And what we're going to do, I'm just going to quickly show you some of them. At the end of the day, I know already which the partition is that I need to mess with. But if you use mount, you will see it lists you the current partitions that are mounted on the SD card and on Linux, and you can see here that the root mount is on the mmcblkop2, which is the one that we actually want to mess around with because we need to resize this to be the full size of the SD card. The actual boot partition we don't want to touch. That's the one that actually starts the boot process when you turn on your unit. The other areas here are things like for temp file systems and stuff like that. We don't want to touch those either. They're just going to take care of themselves. One of the other commands that we can use is the fdisk command. Now it's fdisk that we're also going to use to change everything. But if you do fdisk, get it right, -L, it will list all of the current things that are set up. Now most of these are RAM disks, which we don't care about as we go down here, so that's pretty much all the ones that are listed. At the end here, what we see at the bottom here is the full size of the SD card, which is 29.7 gigabytes, which is as a disk with a device MCBLK0. So this is how many sectors, etc., etc. The devices that are mounted on that are the two that are listed at the very end. You can see here the first one, which is the boot partition. That's why it's got the little asterisk next to it. And the second one is where everything else is put after boot. And that is the one that we want to manipulate. And we're going to use the fdisk command to do that. So what we need to do is first we'll go into Fdisk and tell it what drive we're going to be, or sorry, what partition we're going to be playing with. So when you start it, you need to tell it the drive, the physical disk that you're playing with, which in our case is the mmcblk0. Right? So you say fdisk space /dev/mmcblk0, press enter, and now we're into the Fdisk utility. Anything you do in here, unless you do a W for writing from this command line, it will lose all of those changes when you do the reboot. Now, what we want to do here is we want to look at disk 2, okay, which is the second disk. So P would print the current partition table. And as I said, the one that we are actually interested in is the second partition, P2. So what we want to do is we actually want to delete this. So we use the D command and tell it we want to delete partition 2. Press enter. It'll ask us to confirm this. So we're just going to say yes. We're just going to press enter to confirm that. That has now deleted it. Now we don't need to go back and look. What we now want to do is create a new partition. And the nice thing is that it's going to give us the defaults to maximize the amount of available space. So we press new, we want the primary partition, so we just press enter to accept the default. We want it to be partition 2, which is what the one we just deleted was, because that's, we don't want to do 1 because that's the boot partition. So again, we accept that. This first sector is automatically populated for the sector right after the currently used one, which is the boot partition, so we can just accept that. And the last sector, of course, goes to the end of the SD card, so we're just going to accept that. Now, the nice thing about what I've just shown you is it does not care whether you're using a 4 gig, an 8 gig, a 16 gig, or a 32 gig. These will automatically adjust to suit whatever has been mounted as your device when it booted up, so you just have to accept the defaults. Now what we want to do is actually write this partition table back to the card, so we just do W and enter. Now the kernel that's running is still using the old table, and we actually need to reboot now in order to make this table take effect, and then we can resize the partition once you've done that to expand it out to the full size. Now it hasn't lost all of your directories or anything else, so you're perfectly safe to do this. So all we do now is a reboot, and we press enter and we let it go through its reboot process. So I'll come back to you as soon as this is done. Okay, this has now come back to the logon, so we just type in root. I've not changed that from the default where there is no password. Now if I do a df-h now, you can see it still shows me that I've used 88% because that's what the actual file system is still showing. What we now have to do is run a command called resize to fs on that second partition to actually resize it. We've already written the partition table, it's just its structure and everything else has not been updated. So I'm just going to take and show you the command here. So it's resize to fs/dev/ and then the partition that we just created, which is this. You press the enter key, and now it's going to take a few moments to resize it. If you do the df-h again, you'll now see that we have 28 gigabytes available, and we've only used 2% instead of 88%. And that basically is all there is to resizing the file system to take full advantage of the SD card that you happen to have populated. So now we're in a position to start loading up our applications, which is going to be covered in a separate video. So if you found that useful, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't, well then don't, but I hope you did. And I will see you on the next one as we start to learn how to use this IoT 2020 and get some apps up and running. So this completes basically the initial setup to make it ready for use. See you next time. Bye.